Ja pozwolę sobie mówić o angielsku jednak, tak jak inni przed dotychczas, bo jednak mówię lepiej po angielsku, a związek jest bardzo ważny dla państwa. Do dzisiejszego dnia, była hangover, to mi przypomniało budowę, którą znalazłem kiedyś w Polsce, która oferowała różne usługi, między innymi napisane curtain rails fixed, poles hanged. Nie muszę tłumaczyć. Nie tłumaczyło się jako zawieszanie karniszy, tylko wieszanie podatków. So I'll stick to English if I may. Amongst the questions we were told to discuss was the question of whether the Lisbon Treaty was important, whether it was going to lead to a federal Europe, whether Europe was going to expand, whether Europe was going to have a foreign policy, what Europe's internal policy should be, and so on. Well, just looking at what's been going on in the news for the last week, we can say there's no political will at all to have any kind of coherent foreign policy at all. There's a silly woman called Lady Ashton who was completely absent, and various leaders of various nation states within Europe were conducting their own foreign policies, completely independent. The financial crisis of 2008 demonstrated that there was no attempt at reaching a Europe-wide solution. Every country looked to their own nation states and their own governments. Germany and France briefly tried to reach some kind of an agreement on how they should proceed, but didn't. It was only those countries affected by the euro that began to act in coordination when their own currency became threatened by the crisis in Greece and Ireland. So I think that the whole question of the Lisbon Treaty is just a red herring. I don't know how many such treaties you can find, but they are actually pretty much together. What has become obvious to absolutely every single leader in the European community is that there's a far greater crisis affecting Europe. It's quite simply the crisis of civil society and community. Several decades of laissez-faire, multiculturalism, and liberalism have created the erosion of civil society in absolutely every country in the Union. The creation of small countries and enclaves which are living completely outside the societies they live in, whether they're North Africans in Marseille or Antwerp, or Asians in Bradford or Manchester. They live by the rules of the Maghreb or Pakistan. They live completely outside the host community and do not either bring anything into the host community or take anything out of it. The host community, and this goes also to most of the Poles living and working in this country at the moment, very few of them, I'm excluding yourselves because you are here for a very specific purpose, but most of those who are working here do not go to art galleries. They do not bother to find out how this country works. They do find out how the benefit system works, that's true, but they don't learn anything. In Poland, there are no doubt communities of Roma who are doing the same. And this is a huge problem Europe-wide. Everybody is discussing it. Mr. Sarkozy, Mr. Cameron, everybody is aware of it. And it will not be solved at a European-wide level. Trust. There is only a community when I can pay my taxes, knowing, trusting everybody else in the street will pay their taxes, that the people who those taxes will go will distribute them and pay them out and spend them in more or less one share. That the solution is on my side, and that is the private funds, natural and so on. And you cannot create communities in nobody really knows how to address it. But it is quite clear, and it's becoming quite clear to everybody, that it can only be addressed at the small community level, because that's where the democratic deficit starts, where there are large constituencies indirectly electing representatives through lists. There is an immediate tendency towards a democratic deficit because people feel they don't know who they've elected and they know they can't get at those people. If those people don't do what they're supposed to do, there is no way of executing any kind of answerability. So this is, to my mind, the dominant issue in Europe. The other question that was on the list was, will the Polish presidency be a great chance for Poland and for Europe? Well, I have to say it made me rather laugh, because I don't need to tell you that Poland has the most eroded community in the world because, or in Europe, because of 200 years of, well, let's call it, frankly, genocidal policies by various neighbours, by exile, immigration, and so on. Poland historically has very few institutions, and the most powerful institution it has had, and this has saved it recently, the church has now suddenly gone into a kamikaze drive with its own, which rather takes it out of the arena. And Poland has the largest, the greatest trust deficit in Polish society of any place in Europe. They keep conducting polls, I mean the kind of polls POWM, yes, to this effect, and it turns out that something like 79% of Poles do not trust each other. And the state does not trust the citizens and regulates them, over-regulates them. Regulation is an expression of distrust. The assumption in the administration in Poland is that everybody is going to cheat, and that is why you have to make them produce bits of paper that are stamped 15 times. And so every time, I don't have to tell you what the difference between going and renewing your passport in Poland or here is, or renewing any piece of paper, let alone starting up a business. And this web of frightful treaties and regulations is, quite frankly, strangling the country. And it makes me quite sick, frankly, hearing yet another minister stand up and tell us how he's wasting taxpayers' money on encouraging certain types of business, when in fact the government is strangling not only all the other businesses, but most people's daily lives. For 3.5 years, the government has been saying that it's going to make a user-friendly state, and 3.5 years later, virtually nothing has been achieved in this direction, and there aren't any prospects. And so the idea that a country, that an administration, a system, which daily insults its citizens, sorry, I'm coming to an end, because every time you go and they say, no, your signature has to be vetted by a notarial act, and your letter has to be translated by a sworn translator, that is actually telling you that they don't